The air inside the medicine outpost hummed with the low thrum of bioregenerators and the soft hiss of sterilizing mist curling from ceiling vents. Located on the arid moon of Zyra 7, nestled in a shallow crater between rust-colored mesas, the facility served as a neutral triage hub during the uneasy ceasefire between the Terran Concord and the Varelian Dominion. Humans and aliens alike passed through its sterile halls, limping, bleeding, or unconscious, but few lingered long, except for Corporal Joran Vale. He wasn't supposed to be there at all. Joran hadn't taken a plasma bolt to the chest or lost a limb in the skirmishes that flared along the border worlds. He'd simply collapsed from heat exhaustion after chasing down a black market smuggler through the dunes just outside the outpost's perimeter fence. Too stubborn to call for backup, too proud to admit weakness, he'd blacked out face first in the red sand. That's how the medics found him. Half buried, lips cracked, and mumbling something about overdue rent on Mars colony. They dragged him inside and dumped him on a med couch in Bay 3, where the lighting was dimmer and the air smelled faintly of lilacs. A Varelian touch, no doubt. Across the bay stood Lyra Ven, the Varelian head nurse on rotation. She was tall, slender, with luminous purple skin that shimmered faintly under the overheads, like quartz kissed by twilight. Her hair, a cascade of bone-white strands, was pinned back in a loose knot, though several rebellious tendrils had already escaped to frame her high cheekbones. Eyes the color of storm-churned amethyst watched the monitors with quiet intensity, her long fingers dancing over a datapad. She moved with the grace of someone who'd spent lifetimes tending to wounds, yet something in her posture betrayed weariness, an old kind of tired that no amount of sleep could heal. Lyra wasn't just any nurse. She was exiled. Once a celebrated bioengineer in the Varelian Royal Medici, she'd been banished to the frontier after her controversial research on interspecies cellular bonding was deemed ethically destabilizing by the High Synod. Now, she stitched up mercenaries and calibrated nutrient drips for smugglers, all while nursing a quiet grief. Her people believed Varelians could not bond meaningfully with Outworlders, especially humans, whom they saw as impulsive, short-lived, and dangerously emotional. Yet, late at night, when the station slept, Lyra sometimes wondered what it might be like to hold someone's hand without gloves. To be seen not as a healer, but as a person. Joran stirred on the med couch, groaning as his eyelids fluttered open. He blinked up at the curved ceiling, then turned his head slowly, his gaze landing on Lyra. She was beautiful in a way that made his throat tighten. Not just visually stunning, but radiating a calm that felt like sanctuary. "Where am I?" he rasped, voice dry as dust. "Medicine outpost, Bay 3, Lyra said, stepping forward with a hypospray. Her voice was soft, musical, with a lilt that reminded him of wind chimes in a summer storm. "You're dehydrated, sun-scorched, and mildly concussed from your dramatic sand nap. Nothing permanent." Joran managed a lopsided grin. "Had worse Mondays." She almost smiled. Almost. Instead, she scanned his vitals with a handheld dermal reader, her expression unreadable. "You're stable, but your electrolyte imbalance needs correction. I'll administer a neural stabilizer. Standard protocol." She turned toward the med cabinet, her white hair catching the light like spun silver. Her fingers trembled slightly as she selected a vial. The cabinet was organized with military precision. Blue-labeled vials for neural regulators, red for coagulants, green for antitoxins. But Lyra, distracted by a sudden pang of loneliness, by the memory of a whispered argument with her sister back on Viral Prime about wasting her life among primitives, grabbed the wrong vial. It looked identical, same blue cap, same shape. Only the serial code differed. And in that split second, she didn't check. The hypospray hissed against Joran's neck. He winced. "That stings more than usual." "It's a stronger formulation," Lyra said, her voice tighter now. She turned away quickly, busying herself with the datapad. But her eyes darted to the discarded vial in her hand. Her breath hitched. It wasn't a neural stabilizer. It was Sylvath, a restricted Varelian bonding agent. Illegally synthesized, unapproved, unpredictable. Sylvath was a relic of ancient biorituals, once used by Varelian matriarchs to forge unbreakable emotional and physiological links with chosen companions. It didn't just affect the mind, it rewired cellular memory, deepened empathy pathways, and triggered a cascade of hormonal synchronicity. In theory, it could create a bond so profound that separation caused physical pain. In practice, it had only ever been tested on Varelians. Administering it to a human, that was uncharted, possibly catastrophic. Lyra's stomach twisted. She'd been storing it in the med cabinet for months. Not to use, never to use, but as a reminder of who she once was. A symbol of hope she refused to extinguish. And now, she'd injected it into a human soldier. Joran sat up slowly, rubbing his neck. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lyra forced calm into her voice. "I'm fine. Rest. You'll be discharged in a few hours." But as she turned to leave, Joran caught her wrist. Not tightly, just enough to stop her. "Hey, you're shaking." She froze. Her purple skin flushed a deeper violet at the touch. No one touched her. Not like this. Not without protocol. Not with warmth. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible, eyes wide with panic. "Don't let anyone know." Joran frowned. "Know what?" She pulled her hand away gently, but her gaze held his, pleading, vulnerable, terrified. "Just don't mention this treatment to anyone, especially not command." He studied her face, the fear beneath the composure, and something inside him softened. He didn't understand, but he nodded. "Okay, between us." She exhaled, relief and guilt warring in her chest. "Thank you." But even as she walked away, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Within the hour, Joran began to feel strange. Not ill, not dizzy, but hyper-aware. The hum of the lights wasn't just sound, it had texture. The scent of antiseptic carried echoes of memory. His mother's clinic back on Luna, where he'd scraped his knee as a boy, and when Lyra passed by again, refilling a saline bag 2 bays over, he felt a pull in his chest so intense it stole his breath. It wasn't attraction, not exactly. It was deeper, like his body recognized hers as home. He watched her move, and for the first time in years he didn't feel alone. Meanwhile, Lyra monitored his vitals from the control desk, heart pounding. The Sylvath was activating faster than expected. Human biology must accelerate the process. She pulled up his bio-readings. His oxytocin and vasopressin levels were spiking, neural synchronicity with her own biometrics already detectable through the outposts network. The bond was forming, and it was mutual. Panic clawed at her throat. The command found out, she'd be arrested. Worse, she'd be recalled to Viral Prime for neural purging. And Joran? He could suffer irreversible psychological damage. Or worse, if the bond destabilized, it could shut down his autonomic nervous system. She had to fix this, fast. But before she could act, alarms blared through the outpost. Red lights flashed. A deep voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, code Crimson. Hostile incursion at the east airlock. Repeat, hostile incursion." Joran was on his feet instantly, soldier instincts overriding confusion. He grabbed a discarded sidearm from a supply cart, standard procedure during alerts. "Where's the breach?" Lyra's eyes widened. "You're not cleared for combat. I'm cleared for breathing, and right now that's in danger." He shot back, already moving toward the corridor. "Where's the armory?" She hesitated, then ran after him. "This way, but stay behind me." The attackers were Varelian separatists, rogue warriors who rejected the ceasefire, led by a scarred warlord named Corvex. They'd come not to kill, but to steal. A prototype biostabilizer stored in Medicine's vault, capable of halting cellular decay in cryo-frozen Varelian elders. For them, it was a tool of resurrection. For the Dominion, it was a weapon of immortality. And it was stored 10 meters from where Joran and Lyra now crouched behind a collapsed bulkhead. Gunfire echoed down the hall. Blue plasma bolts seared the walls. 2 human guards lay slumped near the vault door, motionless. "We can't let them take that serum," Lyra said, voice tight. "It's unstable. In the wrong hands. It'll turn your elders into biobombs." Joran finished, having read the intel briefings. Yeah, not happening. He peeked around the corner. 3 hostiles, heavily armored, their purple skin marked with ritual scars. One carried a resonance disruptor, the kind that could fry a human nervous system in seconds. We need a distraction, Joran whispered. Lyra's eyes flicked to a maintenance duct overhead. I can loop behind them through the ventilation shaft. Cut the power to their disruptor. You'll get shot. I'm Varelian. They might hesitate. Might isn't good enough. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, something passed between them. Not words, but understanding. A shared instinct. A rising tide of connection neither could explain, but both felt down to their bones. Joran nodded. Go. I'll cover you. Lyra scrambled up into the duct, her movements swift and silent. Joran waited 20 seconds, then fired 3 shots down the corridor, deliberately missing, but drawing their attention. Hey, ugly. Try this on for size. The separatists turned, snarling. One raised the disruptor. That's when the lights died. In the sudden darkness, only emergency strips glowed faintly along the floor. Joran dove left as the disruptor hummed to life. Too slow. A searing wave of energy grazed his shoulder, sending white-hot pain down his arm. He cried out, rolling behind a medcart. Above, Lyra dropped from the duct, landing silently behind the disruptor wielder. She drove a neural stunner into his neck. He collapsed. The other 2 whirled. Joran fired. One went down. The last one, Corvex himself, charged. Lyra met him head-on, not with a weapon, but with words. Cor, the Synod exiled you for genocide, not glory. This isn't honor. Cor's eyes burned with fury. You side with humans now, sister? You've gone soft. I've grown wise. He lunged. She sidestepped, but not fast enough. His fist connected with her jaw, sending her crashing into a console. Sparks flew. Joran staggered to his feet, shoulder screaming, vision blurred. He saw Lyra down, saw Cor raising his blade, and something inside him snapped. Not rage, but a desperate primal need to protect. He didn't think. He threw himself forward, tackling Cor to the ground. They rolled, grunting, fists flying. Cor was stronger, faster, but Joran fought with the wild desperation of someone who just found something worth keeping. He landed a solid punch to Cor's throat. The warlord gasped, choking. Lyra recovered, limping over. She raised her stunner, but Cor, with his last breath of strength, triggered a signal on his wristband. The vault door hissed open. No! Lyra cried. But before the separatists could retrieve the serum, containment alarms wailed. The vault's internal sensors had detected unauthorized access. Auto-quarantine protocols initiated. Nanite sealants flooded the chamber, encasing the serum in an impenetrable polymer shell. Cor roared in frustration. This isn't over. Security drones descended from the ceiling, stun beams crackling. The remaining separatists were neutralized within seconds. Silence fell, broken only by Joran's ragged breathing and the dripping of coolant from a ruptured pipe. Lyra knelt beside him. Are you hurt? Just my shoulder. And my pride. He tried to smile, winced instead. You okay? She touched her swollen jaw. I've had worse. Then she noticed his pupils were dilated. His pulse, visible at his throat, was racing. Not from adrenaline, but from something else. The bond. It was accelerating. Joran, she said softly. We need to talk. He looked at her, really looked, and in that gaze, she saw it. Not confusion, not fear, but recognition. As if he'd known her all his life. What did you give me? He asked, voice gentle. She swallowed. Something I never meant to give anyone. Before she could explain further, Commander Rallis, human, stern, and notoriously suspicious, strode into the corridor, flanked by 2 armored MPs. His eyes swept the scene. Fallen separatists, damaged consoles, Joran bleeding, Lyra disheveled. What happened here? He demanded. Joran stood slowly. Hostile incursion. We stopped them. Rallis's eyes narrowed. You're a corporal, Vale. Not tactical response. I was nearby. Reacted. And you? He turned to Lyra. Your biometrics spiked abnormally during the attack. And your private med cabinet shows unauthorized access to restricted compounds. Lyra's blood ran cold. Joran stepped slightly in front of her. She was treating me. Standard post-collapse protocol. Funny, Rallis said. Because the logs show you were administered Silvath-7, a banned Varelian neuroagent. Care to explain why a nurse has that in her cabinet, and why a human soldier has traces of it in his bloodstream? Silence hung like a blade. Lyra's mind raced. Denial would crumble under scrutiny. Truth could destroy them both. But Joran did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound, but it carried weight. Silvath? That's what you're worried about? While separatists just tried to turn your medbay into a war zone. Commander, with all due respect, you're chasing ghosts while the real enemy walks free. Rallis's jaw tightened. Don't deflect, Corporal. I'm not, Joran said, stepping closer. Run the full scan. You'll find the Silvath didn't come from her cabinet. It was in the smuggler's cargo I was chasing before I collapsed. Must have ruptured during the scuffle. I inhaled it. She was just trying to stabilize me. Lyra stared at him, stunned. It was a lie, but a brilliant one. Plausible. Unverifiable. Rallis studied Joran's face, then Lyra's. He didn't believe it, but without proof he couldn't act. Fine, he said coldly. But both of you are on probation. Any further anomalies, and you're shipped off-world. He turned and left, his boots echoing down the hall. The moment he was gone, Lyra sagged against the wall. Why did you do that? Joran met her eyes. Because whatever you gave me, it's not poison, it's connection. And I think you're scared of that. Tears welled in her amethyst eyes. You don't understand. The bond, it's irreversible. It'll tie our lives together. If I die, you might too. If you reject it, your mind could fracture. Then don't die, he said simply. And I won't reject it. She let out a shaky breath, half laugh, half sob. You're insane. Maybe, he said, offering his good arm. But I've got a feeling about you, Lyra Ven. Like I've been waiting my whole life to meet someone who sees the world. And me. The way you do. Outside, the twin moons of Zyra 7 rose over the crimson dunes, casting long shadows across the outpost. Inside, two souls stood amidst the wreckage, bound by accident, choice, and something far older than either of them understood. And though danger still lurked, Command's suspicion, Core's vengeance, the unknown effects of the bond, they weren't alone anymore, not even close. In the days that followed the attack, the medicine outpost settled into a fragile calm, like the quiet after a storm that everyone knew could return at any moment. Repairs were underway, walls patched, consoles rebooted, security protocols tightened. But the tension lingered in the air like static before lightning. Commander Rallis had doubled patrols and installed new surveillance nodes in every corridor. His suspicion coiled tight beneath his clipped orders and narrowed eyes. He hadn't forgotten the anomaly in Joran's blood work or the unlogged vial in Lyra's cabinet. He was watching, waiting. Joran, cleared for light duty but ordered to remain on base, found himself assigned to inventory checks and equipment logs. Boring, safe tasks meant to keep him out of trouble. Yet every few hours, whether by coincidence or something deeper, his path crossed Lyra's. She never spoke much. Protocol forbade extended personal interaction between medics and patients, but her gaze would linger a second too long. Her fingers tremble when she passed him a datapad, her breath catch when their hands nearly brushed. And Joran felt it too. Not just the bond, but something warmer, quieter growing beneath it. A trust, a curiosity, maybe even the beginnings of love. Then came the dreams. At first, they were vague, shadows moving through a violet-hued garden. The sound of distant chimes. A voice singing in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. But by the third night, the visions sharpened. He stood beside a younger Lyra on a balcony overlooking a city of spiraling towers made of living crystal. She wore ceremonial robes, her white hair loose, her eyes bright with hope. A tall Varelian woman, Her mother, he guessed, placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "The heart that dares to love beyond its kind must be strong enough to bear the world's silence." He woke with tears on his cheeks. The next morning, he found Lyra in the hydroponics annex, tending to a cluster of lumina blooms, flowers native to Viral Prime that only opened under low-frequency harmonic tones. She hummed softly as she worked, the same melody from his dream. "You sang that to me," he said quietly. She froze, turned. "That's impossible. I dreamed it. Last night, you were on a balcony. With your mother." Her amethyst eyes widened, then filled with sorrow. "That was the day I presented my research on interspecies bonding to the Synod. The day they called me a traitor to our biology." She looked away. "Sylvath doesn't just link bodies, it shares memories, emotions, fears. Your mind is accessing mine. Is that dangerous?" he asked. "It could be," she admitted. "If the emotional load becomes too great, one of us could fracture, lose ourselves in the other. Or," Joran said, stepping closer, "we could learn each other, really learn each other. Not as soldier and nurse, not as human and Varelian, just as people." She stared at him, the lumina blooms glowing softly around them, their petals unfurling in response to her presence. "You don't understand what you're offering. My people see humans as fleeting, bright, yes, but gone before you've truly lived. To bond with one, it's considered a kind of beautiful tragedy." "Then let's make it less tragic," he said with a crooked smile. "And more beautiful." She almost laughed, almost let herself believe it. But then the alarms blared again. This time it wasn't an attack, it was a distress call. A refugee transport, carrying displaced families from the border colonies, had crash-landed in the dunes less than 5 clicks west of the outpost. Survivors were transmitting weak signals, some injured, others exposed to toxic sandstorms. "Medivac team, assemble in Bay 1, the intercom commanded. Lyra didn't hesitate. She grabbed her field kit and ran. Joran followed. "You're not assigned," she said, strapping into the med transport hovercraft. "Neither are you," he shot back. "But you're going. So am I." She didn't argue. The hovercraft skimmed over the rust-colored dunes, kicking up plumes of red dust. Outside, the sky churned with approaching storm clouds, electric green at the edges, a sign of ionized sand. Time was running out. They found the wreckage half-buried, its hull cracked open like a broken egg. Inside, 12 survivors, 8 adults, 4 children, huddled in the aft compartment, shivering, some coughing up black phlegm from inhaling silica particulates. Among them was a small Varelian girl, no older than 8, her purple skin scraped raw, her white hair matted with blood. She clutched a broken doll, eyes wide with terror. Lyra knelt beside her immediately. "What's your name?" she asked in Varelian. "Nira," the girl whispered. "Nira, I'm going to help you. Can you let me see your arm?" The girl nodded, trembling. As Lyra worked, Joran assisted the others, distributing oxygen masks, stabilizing fractures, calming panicked parents with a steady voice that belied his own racing heart. He moved with quiet competence, the kind born not of training alone, but of genuine care. One human mother, clutching her feverish son, looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "You're not just a soldier, are you?" He didn't answer, but he held the boy's hand until the medrones arrived. Back at the outpost, the survivors were triaged and treated. Nira's injuries weren't life-threatening, but her vitals were erratic. Lyra ran a deep scan, and her blood ran cold. "She's been exposed to calyx radiation," she told Joran later, voice low, "from the smuggler's ship that crashed near here last week. It's been leaching into the groundwater. Can you treat it?" "We can suppress the symptoms. But true recovery requires a cellular regeneration infusion, one that only works if the donor's DNA is a close match." She looked at Joran, her expression unreadable. Varelian biology is highly specific. The odds of finding a match among refugees are nearly zero, unless she didn't say it. But Joran felt the thought echo through the bond like a struck bell. "You," he said. You're a match. She nodded slowly. My blood carries a rare mitochondrial variant. It's why I was chosen for Royal Medici training. But donating it, it's dangerous. It would weaken me. And if the bond is already active between us. She trailed off. It could destabilize both of us, he finished. Or it could make us stronger. She looked at him, really looked. Why do you keep choosing to trust me? After everything? Because, he said, voice quiet but firm. You're the first person in a long time who's looked at me like I matter. Not just as a body to patch up or a gun to aim, but as someone worth saving too. That night, under the twin moons, Lyra performed the transfusion. In a dimly lit med-cubicle, Nira asleep on the couch, Lyra connected a biolink between her own circulatory system and the girl's. Joran stood watch not because he was ordered to, but because he couldn't bear to be far from her. Halfway through the procedure, Lyra swayed. Her skin turned ashen, her breath shallow. The bond flared. Joran felt her pain like a knife in his chest, her fatigue dragging at his limbs. Without thinking, he took her hand. Don't let go, he whispered. She squeezed back, and in that touch something shifted. The Sylvath bond, once a one-way current, became a loop. Their life forces balanced each other. Her strength flowing into Nira, his steadiness holding Lyra upright. It wasn't science. It was something older, something sacred. When it was done, Nira's breathing evened. Her color returned. Lyra collapsed into Joran's arms. He carried her to her quarters, laid her gently on her sleep pallet, and stayed until her breathing deepened into sleep. As he turned to leave, her hand caught his wrist, just like before. Stay, she murmured, half asleep. Just for a little while. He sat on the edge of the pallet, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the way her white hair spilled over her shoulder like moonlight. And for the first time in years, he felt peace. But peace in this corner of the galaxy was always temporary. 2 days later, a Dominion envoy arrived. A sleek, obsidian-plated shuttle descending through the storm-cleared sky. Out stepped High Prelate Zoran Vel, Lyra's former mentor, and the one who had voted to exile her. He demanded an audience. In the command briefing room, Zoran stood tall, his purple skin etched with the silver tattoos of the Royal Synod, his eyes cold as vacuum. Lyra Ven, he said without preamble, you have violated sacred law. The use of Sylvath on an outworlder is punishable by neural erasure. I didn't use it intentionally, she said, voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. It was an accident. Accidents do not rewrite biology, Zoran countered. The bond exists, and it threatens the purity of our lineage. You will return to Viral Prime immediately for corrective procedure. And if I refuse, then the Concord will be informed of your illegal possession of restricted biotech. You will be imprisoned, and your human will be quarantined for study. Joran stepped forward. Over my dead body. Zoran's lip curled. Your death would be a footnote, human, but hers would be a tragedy. Before anyone could speak further, the outpost's main viewscreen flickered to life, not with command, but with a live feed from the dunes. The image showed Corvex, alive, standing before a newly assembled army of separatists. Behind him loomed a massive excavation rig, tearing into the desert floor. They've found it, Lyra whispered, horrified. Found what? Joran asked. The Sylvath Vault, Zoran said grimly. An ancient biotemple buried beneath these sands. It contains enough raw bonding agent to link thousands. Core intends to flood the battlefield with it, to force unity through biological compulsion. He believes it will end the war by erasing free will. He's insane, Joran said. No, Lyra said softly. He's desperate, and that makes him more dangerous. Zoran turned to her. Only a Varelian of royal bloodline can deactivate the temple's core. You are the last of your house with that access. She looked at Joran. He nodded. I'll go, she said. You'll die, Zoran warned. Maybe, she said. But if I don't, everyone else might. And so, with the uneasy alliance of a disgraced nurse, a stubborn human soldier, a stern prelate, and a wary commander, A plan was forged. They would infiltrate the dig site under cover of the next sandstorm. Joran would provide tactical cover. Lyra would enter the temple alone. Its biolocks would reject any non-Varelian. Zoran would guide her through the rituals. And if they failed, well, no one spoke of that. As they prepared, Joran found Lyra checking her medkit one last time. "If we don't make it back," he said, "I just want you to know, I don't regret any of it. Not the injection. Not the bond. Not you." She looked up, eyes glistening. "I was taught that love between species was a flaw. But you've made me believe it's a kind of courage." He kissed her then, soft, brief, but filled with everything words couldn't say. Outside, the wind howled. The storm was coming, and with it, their fate. Beneath the howling storm, Joran and Lyra moved like shadows across the dunes. The ancient Sylvath vault glowing faintly beneath the sand like a buried star. Kor's forces were distracted by the tempest, giving them just enough time to slip inside. The temple's corridors pulsed with bioluminescent veins, reacting to Lyra's presence as if remembering her bloodline. Zoran guided her through the final chamber, where a crystalline core throbbed with raw bonding energy. As she placed her hands on the altar, Kor appeared, blade in hand, eyes wild with zeal. But before he could strike, Joran tackled him, the two crashing into a pillar as Lyra chanted the deactivation sequence in the old tongue. The core dimmed, then flared violently. Kor, caught in the backlash, was engulfed in light, not destroyed, but changed. His rage melted into sorrow, the forced unity revealing the grief beneath his war. The vault sealed itself, the threat neutralized. Back at the outpost, command dropped all charges. Zoran himself vouched for Lyra, declaring her actions an act of ancestral redemption. The Synod, shaken by Kor's transformation, began reevaluating their doctrines on interspecies connection. Weeks later, under the twin moons, Joran stood with Lyra in the hydroponics garden, now blooming with lumina flowers transplanted from virile prime. She held his hand, no longer afraid to be seen. "They've offered me a new post," she said softly. "A joint human-Varelian research initiative. On compassion." He grinned. "Guess I'll have to re-enlist, just to keep an eye on you." She laughed, the sound like wind through crystal chimes, and leaned into him. The bond between them had not weakened. It had deepened, not as a tether, but as a bridge. And as the stars wheeled overhead, two worlds apart began to feel, for the first time, like home.